In this video, we're going to look at the last map played against BDS and G2. Ultimately, BDS would win 7 rounds and be crowned EUL champions. G2 started things off by getting control of Cat at a minute, which is really impressive. Normally it takes a lot more utility and time to do so. But then they make a couple of critical mistakes. The first one is trying to plant with a low health planter. The second issue is no control underneath to prevent the Legion, of all people, from denying plant. And then lastly, why is Virtue hitting the back after they've dumped denial? Basically, the attackers need to kill the planter with their gun. Didn't think that the take warranted a flank to open things up for the plant. Round number 2, we have BDS going downstairs into the basement. I personally think that this is the most interesting round from these two playing each other. What makes this round so interesting is that BDS goes hard into denial ops with Bandit and Cade. So G2 reads into this operator selection and decides not to go for a kitchen take. But BDS actually don't bring any impacts, and this is another thing that we'll see on G2's end when they defend. Instead, G2 tries to open up Moto and Blue Hatch, but I think most competitive players will agree that if you push Kitchen and Dirt, it's more winnable than the pinch that they're trying to do from Moto and Blue. Additionally, because of the way that Cade positioned himself, he never used any one of his Kai charges, and he could have done so on the Blue or Moto Hatch to prevent this kind of take. But in some ways, it almost invited them to go for that take. Strategic fangirling aside, the big player here is Renshiro, who comes up huge, able to push the player coming down blue when there's a window of opportunity. There's a pinch coming from Moto as well. And then swing onto that player Moto, as well as swing back onto another player blue. Without Renshiro, this round would have not been won. Round number 4, we're back to CCTV. This time, G2 decides to go for a split take. Habana botches the breach onto the cache wall from construction. There is a line that separates the vault prompt. I'm not even sure why she was going for a vault. Should be a crouch so you can default plant. The way to adapt in this situation, though, from G2's side is to flood. You cannot go for a plant here, and Pengu's going to try to do that, but really it just comes down to Habana's breach not working properly. After losing a defense where G2 did decide to go for a kitchen dirt take, BDS goes back to the basement. G2 will try to repeat what had been successful by doing yet another kitchen take. The push falls apart during the execute. What happens is Kanto tries to push through blue in order to contest the two anchors, Arsenal side and dirt, but ultimately he dies. An IQ from the main hall creeps up the hallway, the long hallway, but doesn't kill the Valkyrie throwing a C4 from the door that angle should be able to see. I'm not so sure why the IQ and also Sophia decided to get so aggressive. G2's first defensive round, they go to the basement. BDS selects to do a blue and Moto take. Again, no impacts on the side of G2. Not sure if these teams think that it's a stronger take. I don't. Or if they're just not reading into the fact that there's no impacts. In order to get the player out of blue, what BDS does is to have a player over the blue hatch, and then Sophia watching blue from Adam or New Blue. The player over the hatch, that's the kill onto Jaeger. Not really sure what Jaeger was thinking there, because the rotation from blue into Arsenal is one, especially through the door, is one most players would never do. Blue control alone nets 3 kills against the defenders. It seems that blue is so important in this round that I'd actually recommend reinforcing the blue wall into dummies, not the one closest to the dummies, but furthest, like towards the door, just so that smoke can play on that reinforced wall. Onto a gym defense after a successful CCTV defense. G2 actually do a great job of locking out BDS initially, but it's the play that Bennett makes trying to push up onto gym window when he had the safety of the gym rack or the weights that really ends up kind of costing the control of master control. Mute is in long and Clash is in short, so they're both kind of stacked up in a corner of the map that doesn't really have any influence on the master side. I'm not really sure why Pengu decides to take the 1v1 on the Kali if Mute was going to fry her right after. Feels like Clash would have been better used as intel. In the final round of the EUL Major, it's a little difficult to actually understand what goes on, so I'm going to throw up this diagram on screen. It shows all the crossfires that happened, or not the crossfires, but the lines of sight that the attackers were holding that ultimately led to a very quick win. Not sure why G2 didn't have impacts to trick the cash wall. Regardless, a very enjoyable match. Heartbroken as a long-term G2 fan, but also really cool to see BDS come back. I had previously written off finals in a best of 5 with a map advantage as something not worth viewing as a viewer because it just seems like an impossible feat to overcome, and BDS did it. In the words of Pengu, congrats, best team EU.